And I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
Chris Farfoe.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to be the first speaker for Labour to the second reading of the Arms Military-Style Semi-Automatic Firearms and Import Controls Amendment Bill. It will be of some joy to the members opposite that Labour is going to continue its support for this bill, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the previous Law and Order Select Committee. I understand that was chaired by Jackie Dean, the current chair of the Law and Order Select Committee, and the Minister has alluded it to the work that they did to closely look at this bill, and I believe through a lot of cooperation that the bill has emerged as a better bill, because we are talking about restrictions, further restrictions or further clarification of issues around firearms. It is a polarising matter. It is a matter of trying to weigh up the rights of those who firearm enthusiasts who enjoy their sport, and because of the restrictions that are placed on them because of the nature of their sport, they know those restrictions very well and protect them, and will fight to make sure that they are protected. And that was seen by nearly about 250 submissions that were made to the Law and Order Select Committee in the last session of Parliament. And on the other side of the equation, where we have to balance making sure that the duty of this Parliament to protect our community and also to protect our law and order officers in our communities has to be weighed up as well. And I think that the Law and Order Select Committee of the previous Parliament pretty much got the balance right in making sure that the objectives of this bill could be met, while making sure that the rights of our firearms enthusiasts were protected. Mr Speaker, the objective of this bill is amending the Arms Act to bring clarity to the definition of military-style semi-automatic firearms, so that the police can correctly identify those firearms that should be categorised as such, and that would essentially be subject to greater controls. It also, as the Minister pointed out, will put greater restrictions on air guns, look-alike air guns that look like military-style semi-automatics, that look like pistols, and that look like other restricted weapons. And I think that in terms of our duty as parliamentarians to make sure that our communities are safe and that our law enforcement officers are safe out in the communities, that imposing that restriction on those look-alike firearms is a very good thing to do. Mr Speaker, Labour of course will support any measures that prevent and mitigate the harm of military-style semi-automatic firearms to our communities, and of course lower the costs of law enforcement as a result of the importation of these weapons that are look-alike. And as we're seeing from the police evidence, these air guns that look like things that should be on the front line, or pistols or other restricted weapons, are being increasingly used out in our streets. This law has come about because of a High Court decision that I understand came from Palmerston North and created some uncertainties around the definition of what a military-style semi-automatic firearm was. And it also is a mechanism with which the government hopes to reduce the number of incidents due to the use of these look-alike weapons. And I think all of us in this Parliament would give that protection to our law enforcement officers, especially our police. They are the ones that, if there is an incident where some or most of us would be heading in the opposite direction, our police officers head into harm's way. They have a very unique role in the fact that sometimes they are putting themselves in physical danger, sometimes they are finding themselves staring down the barrel of a gun, or what seems to be a gun. And we've had too many instances recently where that has, and I'm thinking about the Napier instance and one in the Manawatu too about 6 or 7 years ago, where police officers have been killed in the line of duty. So to make sure that we can put restrictions on these look-alike firearms to reduce the incidence of these call-outs where our police are actually going to places and dealing with things where we've got idiots, I must use that word, who are using what they think are pretend firearms, thinking that they're the real thing. And we need to make sure we're cracking down on that so our police aren't finding themselves in this situation. Because we are finding our police are in situations where they are answering more situations like this and having to arm themselves. and it can escalate itself to a situation where the elite officers, where we have to come and call out an armed defender squad to deal with, again, we're using the words idiots, who think it's a bit of fun to use some of these weapons. Mr. Speaker, I'm not a gun enthusiast, I'm not a firearm enthusiast. That comes about because I haven't had any exposure to it, but I do think there is a place for responsible firearm ownership, and that those law-abiding citizens who adhere to the rules should be able to continue their legal activity to make sure that they can enjoy their sport. I know two examples in my own electorate. One, the former Principal of Papakowhai Primary School, Kevin Wynne, made a submission to the Select Committee on the day that I subbed in on the Select Committee because he is a member of the local gun club, and also John Wilson from the Titahi Bay Volunteer Firefighters Brigade, I believe, is out now trying to hunt himself down some venison. Those are two people who responsibly use firearms in the community, who were very concerned about what rights may have been taken away from this bill. But I think that, as I've said before, that the Law and Order Select Committee have got the balance right in trying to manage the rights of gun owners and enthusiasts around and the public safety and the safety of our law enforcement officers. As the Minister suggested, there were some concerns from a number of gun enthusiasts around Clause 11, I believe, which looked at the regulatory making powers that are contained in this bill. As I just run through some of these, the concerns were that the regulation making powers were too broad, that the regulations would be unconstitutional, that there'd be a lack of parliamentary and public scrutiny, that in some instances regulations might be abused, and the use of regulations gave too much power to police and could cause more confusion in what was already a confused situation. But I believe, as the Minister said, that this bill will address that, and the fact that any regulations that are made of this nature have to be statuted, so those firearms enthusiasts will have the opportunity to have more scrutiny of any changes that are made via regulations, if they think that they are of concern enough to make another submission to the Select Committee. Mr. Speaker, there was also one other area that the Minister alluded to, which the Labor members on the previous Law and Order Select Committee did allude to, and that is around I think it was the Minister referred it to as an arms advisory forum. It was the contention from the Labor members of the Select Committee that an independent reference group be formed to provide, I think the word is contestable advice to the Minister, because it would be the police that would be offering other advice to the Minister. So it was our contention that there should have been an independent reference group there to make sure that there was contestable evidence for, especially around concerns that some firearms owners may have. Unfortunately, that did not get support from the Select Committee, and as the Minister said, an arms advisory forum will be set up to help advise the police if they are looking at any issues, and especially around regulation. And as we have said in the Select Committee minority report from Labor, we will be watching that. Issue very, very closely. But Mr. Speaker, Labor will support this bill to the House. We believe it does strike the right balance in terms of this Parliament's duty to protect our public and also protect the rights of gun enthusiasts around the country who made their voice heard because of the sheer number of submissions that were made to the Law and Order Select Committee. So we are happy to support this bill. We are happy with the outcome of the Select Committee process, and we look forward to supporting this further.
Jackie Dean.
Mr. Speaker, the Arms Military Style Semi-Automatic Firearms and Import Control